If you're looking to purchase a home, get started in real estate investing, or start house hacking here in Colorado Springs, you came to the best place to get started, because we are going to talk about all the best ways and strategies to start investing and purchase real estate here in the Colorado Springs metro area. My name is Tanner. I'm a real estate agent, investor, and house hacker here in Colorado Springs. I have 3 properties myself that I have converted from house hacking into long-term rentals as well as short-term rentals. Today we're going to have one of our guest speakers from our real estate meetup present and give a little speech about what they do in the real estate industry, whether it's different types of lending opportunities, their story of how they got started in real estate, as well as different strategies that would work well here in Colorado Springs. The meetup is not just for house hackers, it is for all types of real estate investors. Whether you're just getting started or you've been in the industry for quite some time, all is welcome to come to our real estate meetup. We host the second and fourth Thursday every month at the Trinity Brewing Company. If you want to get updates or find out more information about that, send me a message. We are also on meetup.com as well as Facebook. We do have a Facebook group that is perfect for any one that wants to connect with other investors. And if you want to follow up with, hey, I need a contractor, you can just ask a question to the Facebook group. I hope you enjoyed this guest speaker. If you want to know about all things Colorado Springs real estate, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more future content coming your way.
Thank you guys so much for having us tonight. We really appreciate it. Again, like Tanner said, I'm Ashley Bromley. This is Sam Bromley. We're the Bromley Mortgage Team. And tonight we're talking about the all-important VA loan. A little bit about our team. So just VA specific, 45% of our funded loans are VA. So we're pretty VA heavy. Obviously, you could guess that possibly by the amount of military bases we have in town, but those are our statistics specifically. Also with that, we have helped 165 veteran families over the last 5 years, and that's just in a 5-year pocket. Sam will get into his background a little bit more. So it's actually a lot more than that over the course of the entire time he's been in mortgages. And then just to bring you up to speed to our latest statistic, the month of May, we will do over $2 million in VA funded loans.
So my background, I've been in the mortgage industry for 10 years now. I got recruited into it out of college. I was a big sales and marketing guy at Missouri State, and I wound up doing these national sales competitions. And a recruiter just came up to me from a VA-specific lender that did loans online, and they recruited me into the company. So that's why I got a crash course 10 years ago, straight out of college. And I couldn't tell you what a mortgage was when I was in college. I was like, oh, I don't know. They taught me about it, and I ran with it. So some fun facts about me. I've skied the steepest slope in North America. Who can guess where that's at? It's in Colorado. Nailed it. Like you ski or something. I've jumped out of a plane, and I am the former badminton state champ in Missouri. So that's fun stuff about me. I like to do a lot of random activities at the end of the day. So go ahead, Ash.
That's true. And then my background is actually in sports broadcasting. I was a sports anchor for 10 years and then decided that didn't fit my life anymore, and I wanted to make a little more money and have a little less fun. So I got into mortgages with Sam, and it's true.
That hurts. That hurts every time. It's okay.
Actually, it has been really fun, and I get to meet a lot of really wonderful people, so I joke, but it has been great. The money part, though, definitely way more than broadcasting. But in broadcasting, that's really where my first love sports kind of took hold. So if you ever want to talk sports, you come to me, don't go to Sam. I am a former cheerleader and wrestler. I have yelled in Tom Brady's face, and then he continued to talk to me. And I've also ridden in a Super Bowl parade. So those are some fun facts about me.
She did not roast Tom Brady.
I did not, no.
She didn't have too much fun.
No, I just yelled at him. If you want to hear the story later, I'm happy to tell you. It's pretty funny. Okay, so obviously this is a big overview of the things that we're going to cover tonight. And the VA loan, things are very specific. Those guidelines need to be known front and back. And luckily, we're the 2 people you can come to for that. Specifically, we're going to start out with VA eligibility. So who can even access a VA loan? All right, let's talk about the 6 marquee branches of the military. Obviously, that trickles down, but you got your Air Force, your Navy, your Army, your Marines, Coast Guard, and of course the Space Force. And then the things that trickle down from there obviously can also access the VA loan. Also, surviving spouses. But this is a very specific scenario, not just any surviving spouse. It has to be a spouse that has survived their partner had a VA disability and then passed away from that, or they died in a VA combat situation. So those are very specific scenarios in which they are eligible to utilize their partner's, their spouse's VA loan. And then also length of service, rule of thumb, 90 days of active military or active duty. That does vary. Again, that's the rule of thumb, a big umbrella, but that is, every case is so different that we do need to look at it individually every time, but that's a good rule of thumb to go by. And then also full or partial eligibility entitlement. So this,
on this piece, a lot of times after you use the VA loan once, sometimes you'll end up with partial entitlement because, let's say, for example, you got foreclosed on, still have some entitlement left that you can still use it for another loan, or it's tied up in a house you currently own, but you can still buy another house. It's just like, think of it as a gas tank. You use some of it, you still got some left, still buy another house.
right. And then also, let's talk about how you can go about doing that if one person has access to their VA entitlement to get a VA loan and one person doesn't. So specifically when a couple is married, you have to be legally married, and both of those people can be on the VA loan if one person has access to it. Obviously, if two people have access to it, then we have no problems. If a person wants to put their boyfriend or their girlfriend or their fiance on the loan, you can still do that. However, you have to have 12.5% down to do so. So that's a really important piece that we have to remember.
So do you guys do drive-by weddings then?
I've gotten.
He is ordained. He is ordained.
I've gotten 5 people married throughout the 10 years, and hopefully they're still happily married. I couldn't tell you, but they got a house. So.
Listen, all we are concerned about is do they have their full VA entitlement, and yes, they do. That's.
I can't stop love. I don't know.
And then also an important piece of the VA loan is the funding fee. Now, this technically is the only fee associated with the VA loan, and it varies. So the important thing to remember about this, that it's not a set price. The set price.
Yeah, so the percentage, there's going to be a sliding scale that the VA changes from time to time, but it's only VA specific fee in these situations on VA loans. So it can change on down payment, so it can get reduced. So I'm gonna give you an example real quick. So typically on first time use, it's gonna be 2.15% of the loan amount is a fee, specifically not talking about closing costs. We're talking about a fee that goes to the VA to keep the program running. So first time use is different than subsequent use. So if you use the program again, that fee goes up, but there are exemptions. If you have VA disability, you actually get this waived, so you can save like a lot of money if you have a disability rating above 10%. And that leads into this slide. So here's a list of the exemptions.
Right, and so again, these are very specific scenarios that the VA funding fee would be waived, but if you don't fall into any of these, you will have to pay that fee. That's not an option. And that fee is important because that keeps the VA program running so that our veterans can access a loan if they choose to do so at 0% down. So that's the important part of that. So that funding fee is very important.
All right, so we got fees that can and cannot be paid by the veteran. So there's actually fees, and these are kind of different throughout the country because there's customary fees in every different state you're in. So for example, Colorado, who thinks there's a lot of termites here? Nobody, great. It's so dry, there's a few specific areas in Colorado Springs where there's termites, but it's very rare. So in most of the country, you have to get a termite inspection if you're doing a VA loan. Luckily in Colorado, you don't. But that's an example of a fee that typically is allowed to be paid by the sellers. So there's just different fees that are customary in different markets. So appraisals, when we come to fees that can be paid by the veteran, appraisals can be paid for by the veteran, but you can also pay for them by a seller concession. So that can be paid by either party. And on the inspections, so for your own due diligence, everybody, I'm sure, whoever's bought a house, you want to do that inspection. You want to find out if there's, meth in the house, anything fun that, was a great time for other people, but really shitty when you buy a house, you want to know about. So on inspections, that's something obviously the veteran can pay because it's for their due diligence. But there's additional constrictions. For example, if a lender is charging origination charges, so what is an origination charges in the lender's eyes? If anybody's looked at a loan estimate, it would be box A. So whoever's bought a house or looked at one, when you get disclosures, it would be that first box. So it can be called origination, it can be called processing, it can be called underwriting fees. But from a lender standpoint, they can only charge a veteran 1% in total on those fees. So this is capped by the governing body, which is Ginnie Mae, so that people don't get overcharged. So that's an important piece. So there's additional protections because we're talking about, veterans that the government has that overlays more than, say, conventional or FHA loans. So it's really in their best interest, and it limits the ability for lenders to take advantage of people using this benefit because it is very easy to access because it is 0% down. So you're talking not a lot of barriers to get in the product, but they want to protect those people because it is a special benefit, and they want to make sure veterans that also, can access it and not be charged exorbitant fees by lenders. Because a lot of people want to make a buck any way possible, even if it's at a veteran's expense. It's unfortunate. All right, debt to income and residual income. So these are two different things. Residual income is kind of a special, unique requirement to VA loans. Is additional, you can say, underwriting overlay when we're looking at VA loans. It just is to protect a veteran family to make sure they can afford the home. But it is different than your debt to income ratio, which I'm sure everyone is pretty familiar with in this room. So debt to income ratio is the gross income compared to the debts, and typically we're talking stuff on your credit report. We're not talking, your GameStop payment for, renting video games every month or anything like that, or your Boost Mobile. So it's typically your car loans, credit cards, child support, like random things like that that are court ordered that are legally meant to be paid are counted in the debt ratio. And then with the debt to income, it is also different than FHA and conventional because technically there's no cap. So I've seen veterans that have gotten loans and they've had, like, on that specific ratio, I've been up to like 65%. Whereas, not necessarily a good idea, but generally those people have someone else in the house that has income. They just can't be on the loan. So then in my world, I advise people that, hey, you don't want a 65% debt to income ratio because you are extremely house poor. Like, you are not even affording groceries. So that's something I like to cover with people just from a financial advising standpoint to make sure, because there aren't those caps like conventional and FHA, that people are making responsible decisions. So on the residual, and then here's another thing, on the debt to income ratio, it does not include childcare, utilities, and your family size. These are all going to come into account with residual income. So there's a specific amount in each region. I think they have 4 regions for the VA residual calculation. So it's based off your family size. So if you have a family of 2, that requirement on each loan is different. So for example, if we had 2 people in a family, so it's a veteran, let's say, and their spouse buying a house, they have a residual income requirement. Let's say it's $1,000 for easy purposes. If the family size goes up to 4, that residual income requirement becomes, let's say, $1,300. And when we say what is the $1,300, it's the debt to income, all your debts. You add in any child care expenses you have for your family. You add in what the utilities are going to be for the family. You also take out taxes. So you count the taxes, sorry. So it's not gross income anymore, it's net income. And so they want to make sure the family can afford the house. So it's an additional layer to protect veteran families so that they don't qualify for something and then can't afford it from a monthly cost standpoint. Does that make sense? Does anybody need clarification? Because it is a little more involved than that. It wasn't the most eloquent way to tell that. But, and you have a question on the residual income, because it is kind of unique. Go for it.
What's the percentage you need basically to not be house poor?
Good question. So I recommend realistically, on debt to income ratio, when we're not talking about residual on any loan program, I would love to see everybody under 45. It's not really realistic. But on average, I would tell you from like doing, hundreds of loans, I would say on average, the average person is probably at a debt to income ratio of about 47%, let's say. But some people go up to 54%, and it also depends on the loan program. So good question. Anybody else? Go for it, Tim.
If you have a property where you're paying
No. So when we talk, well, good question. So when we talk about who we have to count in that, it's dependents. They refer back to tax returns. So it's whoever you're actually claiming as a dependent or your spouse. So that's how they get that number, because there has to be some controls. Like you said, like you have 8 people in your house, like they're not going to be like, oh, you intend to move 8 people in. Your residual calculation is $100 million. You know what I mean? Like it's not going to go like that. So it's based off tax returns.
Yeah, can you clarify that, please? So if you have rental income coming in on that property, it's not counted as income, this calculation, is that correct?
No. So he was referring to the residual income calculation. So that's going to be different than your debt to income. So if you have, let's say, okay, I will circle back to this, but your question would be if you have rental income coming in and you're qualifying to make a purchase with your VA loan. Is that your question? So if it's a 1-unit house, we consider that border income, and you don't typically get to qualify with it unless there's a history of you receiving that in other houses. But if it's a multi-unit, which I think is kind of what you're getting at, if it's a 2 to 4 unit, you can use that to offset your debt to income calculation, but the residual has nothing to do with that. So residual is just based off the veteran and their family size. So if they're living in 1 unit and it's 4 of them, then that is the same residual calculation. It doesn't matter if they have 8 other people in the other 3 units. Does that make sense? That was a good question, because yeah, that would just apply to the debt to income ratio. All right, income, entitlement, and allotments. So on income, it's a little interesting. So taxable income we talk about, and this is more active duty to a certain extent, if you're active duty and using the VA loan benefit. So this is going to be pretty specific here. So with active duty people, enlistment officers, you're going to have a base pay that everyone receives, and that's different depending on your pay rank. So it'd be if you're an officer or enlisted, how many years you've been in, and then your rank. There's special pays that also active military get. So there's things like combat pay. So when you're deployed, you can receive combat pay. If you're overseas deployed and you're not in combat, they have pay for that. So there's a lot of special sections of pay for active duty military people that will be listed on, anybody that's been in the military, the LES. You'll be familiar with that document. So the LES is a pay stub for the military, ultimately, when they're active. And then non-taxable, which this is also pay that people in the military receive. So basic allowance for subsistence is like covering your food, that kind of stuff. So anybody that's active gets you can say stipend is another way to say that, for food and stuff per month. BAH is the basic allowance for housing that you get in any market where you're stationed. So for example, if someone's in San Diego, probably a bit more expensive than Colorado Springs, right? We're talking 50% more or something more expensive there. So you get a lot more basic allowance for housing there than if someone gets moved by the military to Colorado, and then let's say they're at Fort Carson, that amount's going to go down. So that adjusts based off your locality. And then uniform allowance is pretty straightforward. And then, yeah, family. So these are just different things that people can get paid that are active duty, and these are all non-taxable. What's cool about this is if you ever have been active, we can gross all that up by 25% when you're qualifying for a loan. So that's really why that matters, because that means you get more out of your income. So that means that debt to income ratio is better because you get an extra 25% grossed up. But yeah, that's really primarily for active duty military on that slide. And then calculating your down payment. So this gets a little unique because of the VA loan. So every county has what they call a loan limit, which is technically for conventional loans. So, and off the top of my head, I'm totally blank on the exact number, but it's like 700 in El Paso County, for example, like 767,500, somewhere in there. What is it?
I think it's
Oh, yeah. Thanks. I just wanted you to say that. Jeremy's not a lender, so if I ask him questions, that's why. So on the county loan limit, it kind of plays into these down payments. I'll explain this a little more in a second. So the maximum loan guarantee on a VA loan, if you do not currently have a VA loan, is unlimited. So I've done as high as a lender will allow me to, which I think right now is the highest one I've done is 2.5 million for a VA loan. But some lenders go all the way up to 4 million. So technically, if you don't have a VA loan currently taken out, you can go in the million range. And yeah, typically that's not like an active duty guy who just got in the military, obviously. But so that's a really neat piece that people get confused because lenders will say, oh, we can lend up to 1.5 million or whatever their arbitrary number is that their risk assessment team decided, but there really is no limit on it. So, which is really cool. So typically 0% down. So like I said, on that $2.5 million deal I did, he didn't make a down payment because he was a smart, savvy business guy. And he's like, I can make way more money off my money than paying, at that point it was like 3.25%. We missed those days, but on the interest rate. So the down payment may be needed if you are partially eligible. And this is what I brought up earlier. It's like a gas tank. So if they had a foreclosure, there's less eligibility left. If they have a current loan, less eligibility left, but they still have something left typically. And how that gets calculated, this gets really in the weeds, but it goes off the $767,500 county loan limit. So if someone, this is going to be really bad math. So if someone bought a $200,000 house, they could still buy another home with the VA loan, move out of that one, move into the next one, as long as it's their primary. And it could be up to like, let's just spitball here, $550 on the purchase price of the next one. And both of those loans can tie up their entitlement. So you can technically have multiple loans under the VA loan, but once they max out the gas tank, once we're at E, then they have to do one of two things: sell one of those two properties to get the next one, or they can refinance those into conventional loans or an investment product or some other type of vehicle to free up the entitlement again. Go for it.
So that would work really well for someone who wants to house hack as a VA home buyer.
You gonna let me get to the end? This is just this is the boring details. I know, but yes, no, 100%. You're right. The grand finale, man. Come on. I consider entitlement status full, partial, married, veteran. Yeah, that's enough of that. Go ahead, next one. Okay, so property and appraisals. On this one, it's unique. The VA appraisal is governed by a VA regional loan center. So it's unique in the fact that there is actually someone, one of the guys lives in Canyon City, but he works for the VA and he's part of the appraisal department of a regional loan center that manages all the appraisals for VA loans. So it's a very unique setup. But with the product, you have to use specifically a VA appraiser, which they have to be qualified and set up through the VA regional loan center. So people always shit on VA like appraisals, but literally they're one of the best because that's one of the hardest designations to get because there's so many more qualifications to be a VA appraiser. So from the standpoint, and what is the stat? 96.5 of VA appraisals come in at value, and conventional, I want to say, is around 92. So they're very close, but VA appraisals typically come in close to the value, and they're just better quality appraisals at the end of the day. And they're fixed costs, so it depends on the county. The VA dictates all that. So like in El Paso County, it was tough there in like 2021, 2022 to get an appraiser to go to a property. So they started setting the fee schedule. So everybody, and they make a good amount. So people want to be VA appraisers. It's hard to do. But like, for example, in El Paso County, $800, where the average probably for conventional FHA is probably between $650 and $750. So it's another reason why appraisers want to become VA appraisers. The timeliness rule. So there's also a turn time on all of these, which a lot of people are not aware of, and it depends on county as well. So El Paso County, when I order the VA appraisal, it has to be back in 7 business days, or I can call my friend in Canyon City who works for the RLC. His name is Paige, and he's a very nerdy 60-year-old. He doesn't like when people are late. So I call him, and then he tells me, we'll call the appraiser and said, Mr. Page is going to be upset. And then they give me magically the appraisal that day. So it's good to make relationships is what I'm saying. But so there's a cool process here. Tidewater process is the ability to increase the value of an appraisal that's going to come in low. This is the only loan product or only appraisal product where you have 2 chances to increase the value of the appraisal. First one is Tidewater. So what happens is when the appraiser says, I looked at the comps, Sam, it's going to come in low, he tells me 48 hours before the 7th day. So then I know, like, shit, we got a low appraisal. So I tell typically a listing agent, because they need to substantiate the value of their home that they're selling. And they got to get me comps that they believe will substantiate the value of the price they're selling that home at. So that's your first chance to increase it. So I send those to the appraiser. He still gets it back in 7 days. And then the second one is the ROV, which is the reconsideration of value. So let's say it still comes in low after Tidewater. So it officially comes in low. So the Tidewater is, hey, Sam, the appraiser says, hey, Sam, it's going to come in low. He doesn't tell me how much. Then I get comps from listing, buying, whatever, to substantiate the value, and I send them to the appraiser. If he says, these houses are not even sold, they're on the market still, like, why would you send this to me, Sam? And I'll be like, yeah, that's what the agent sent to me. I don't know what to tell you. Because a verifiable comp is sold in the past 6 months in the immediate area of the house, cannot be under contract or on the market. ROV is the second chance. So it comes in low. Let's say it comes in 10 grand low. Then I can go back and fight with the appraiser again and call Paige again in Canyon City. And he'll tell me if I'm an idiot or not. And then if I'm not, then we'll try and get the value up. And then, like, let's say it's a 10 grand gap. Sometimes I can get that up to like a 3 grand gap instead if the appraiser just didn't do a proper job. So only appraisal process like that in any loan product. So it's super unique. And it gives the veteran and the agents and the buyers really a chance to fight for their client if the appraisers are not being great on the property. But sometimes appraisers are great and it's accurate. So that's how that funnels through.
Yeah. And then obviously other things to consider for the VA loan that are also pretty unique is how concessions and other party contributions and gifts can be distributed. So it is capped by most lenders. Again, a lot of these things that we think are universal are actually just capped by the lender. It's not actually capped by the VA. This is another one of those things that seller concessions can go up to 4%, and that's just rule of thumb by most lenders that you're going to run into with the VA loan. But the fun part is that the VA is the only one that you can use those seller concessions to pay off debt in a VA loan situation, which could be credit card debt or anything else that helps the DTI for the loan situation. Also, you can get contributing gifts and other contributions from, points from a lender, builder, if you're going new build, agents, gifts, those types of things as well.
You want to talk about your partner? I'm just kidding. So yes, there's a lot of ways to use these tools to make an investment portfolio with your VA eligibility. So it's tricky though, because this is one thing you always have to keep in mind. This product was meant for primary residences, not meant for people to gather investment properties. So you do have to be tactful about it, and you have to be ethically and honest. That's the way I always deal with it, because people ask me a lot of interesting questions about how to get around the primary stuff, and I'm like, can't do it. So you can refinance any of the VA loans unlimited amount of times. So there's 2 ways to do that. You can, like I said, get your eligibility out of the one you have and do a conventional loan. Then you free up your VA eligibility to buy another primary. Or you can actually, there's a product called an interest rate reduction loan within the VA loan program. And it's pretty much the easiest refinance you could ever think of. I don't have to income qualify. I don't have to really do anything except pull a credit report, and then I can refinance that person's VA loan in about record 7 business days. And that allows them to take advantage of market rates. So right now, average rate on VA 30-year across the country is probably 6.99, 7.125, somewhere in there, just on fees and how bad your lender is. So what you can do is in 210 days, people who have those loans can do the VA interest rate reduction loan to reduce the interest rate on the home. And then it just recasts. You can do another 25-year term, you can do 30-year term, you can do whatever you want at that point. But ultimately, it allows you to reduce your payment. And then at the end of the day, you can do that even if it's an investment property at the time, which a lot of people don't realize. So even if it's not the primary at the time of doing the VA interest rate reduction loan refinance, if it's investment property and you're already renting it out, you can still refinance it under the VA program. And a lot of people just are not aware of that. And let's talk about a little bit, because this is so specific to house hacking in here. So some ways to do with house hacking. So when you're qualifying for other loans, On border income, which is, you know, pretty much when you're doing the basics of house hacking, it is considered border income is what the term is in the mortgage world. So if you don't have a history of border income, which you claim on your taxes, then when you qualify for the home with the VA loan, you just have to qualify on your own income. And this is just for 1-unit properties. So if you never, like if you have 2 years of history at your last house that you rented out to people and you claimed border income, then they know that you know how to rent to people. It's stable, it's sustainable, things like that. So you can potentially use that on your next purchase to show that help your qualifying income. But on the piece of 1 to 4 units, you can do 0 down for 1 to 4 units, and then you can use where the market rents at would come in on the other 3 units to help your income to qualify for the 4 units. So that's why the VA, I think the best piece to build out an investment portfolio with your VA loan is to do a 4-unit, live in one, use the other units as qualifying income when you qualify for the loan, and then a lot of times people who are active duty will PC permanent change of station every 2 to 4 years. You rent that last unit out, you have all the other ones rented, you go to the next place, you could refinance this one to a conventional loan and then buy another 1 to 4 unit, and then you have that in a different location. So it also mitigates your risk because you're in different locations. Because typically, you know, the government's just dictating wherever the hell they want to send you. So so if it's a decent market, which you talk to people like Tanner and make sure the market's decent for a rental property.
So typically when you refinance, if you're owner occupying it, you get a better rate than if you aren't owner occupying, right? So with a VA loan, is that not the case? If you don't owner occupy it, that VA refinance.
The interest rate reduction piece on the
Right.
VA, the VA specific refinance.
Yes.
Yeah, so there is a price adjustment for that, but it's not anywhere near what an investment property and a primary is in the conventional landscape. Very minimal. So it's going to be pretty similar to just the primary, the VA interest rate reduction refinance. The rates are very similar. So you're not going to see the disparity of like a percent like you do with, if it's in, it's bad, yeah, I know, on the conventional side. So once again, these have to be primary residences. You must live in the home for a reasonable amount of time. If the VA catches wind that you are moving every 2 months and using the VA loan, they'll come knock on your door and say, hey, you're committing mortgage fraud for occupancy, because that is not the purpose of the program. So that's, we have to be careful. So when I say reasonable amount of time, there is no time amounts in the VA guidelines. But if you're moving like in 6 months from a house you bought with the VA loan, really there has to be a substantial reason if you're trying to buy another one with the VA loan. So it can be, hey, you know, we had 3 kids and now we have 8 and now we want a bigger house. It's a lot of work to do in 6 months. But so that's one thing to keep in mind. Like, it's not meant to be an investment product, but it can be just if you use it tactfully, you know. So just don't abuse it. And that is the majority of the things I want to cover on like how you house hack with it. But yeah, biggest thing, got multiple VA loans at once, and you can purchase 1 to 4 units at 0% down, which is huge. And I'm sure, I would imagine someone's thinking about assumable mortgages right now in your heads because everybody's marketing those on the VA assumables. Technically, if you're not a veteran, you can assume a VA loan. It would not be in the best interest of the veteran who had that loan, but from a technicality standpoint, you could. If someone's looking to get out of a really bad situation, you're like, hey, I'll assume your VA loan that you have on the house that you're selling to me. That's kind of how that works. I don't know does anybody have questions before I get into that on any of the house hacking, the investment piece, how you use it to kind of build an investment portfolio? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if you're, say you can have multiple VA loans at once, just depending on how full your tank is, how do you determine how much tank you have left?
Good question. So initially, unlimited tank. So we're running Tesla with 1 million miles, unlimited, no gas. But once you use it, then that's when the county loan limit comes in. So that's that nuance piece. And I would really like, it's really in the weeds, the calculation. So if you want to email me, I'll send you an example. It's much easier to write out than like try and tell you, to be honest. Good.
What is the loophole or the way around? We're always looking for loopholes,
Yeah.
gray area, and make things happen.
How do you massage it? Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
STR, short-term rental income.
Yeah.
I've got a property that I've got a property, that's my primary, and I'm renting out part of it as short-term rental income, how can I use that as qualifying income?
So once you have a 2 years history, my understanding is you can use that in the income calculation.
Okay, so if I have that first home for 2 years, I can use it, and then I get another house hack,
Right.
and I'm living in part of it as short-term renting the other side of the duplex.
Oh, so hold on. Are we talking 2 unit?
Yeah,
What are we talking? Let's do. Yeah, give me exact type of property.
Let's say the first one was a duplex.
Okay.
And the second one was a duplex.
Okay.
So, and I'm short-term renting.
Okay, so the short-term rental piece, yeah.
Can I use the short-term rental income as qualifying income?
That's a good question. Because when I talk about border income, that's specifically 1 units. So on the short-term rental, I honestly haven't run into that. Do you have any idea, Jeremy?
I was going to ask you about, like, for VA with border income, like, for Fannie Mae, like, home ready, it has to be the same person.
Yeah.
The same for VA.
So I would have to double check that if it has to be the same person or not. That's a good question, though. Okay.
That income is just showing up as Schedule C income?
Right.
On a tax return?
Right. And you talking about the short-term rental income or the border? So if you're going to buy the next property, I mean, honestly, when you go to buy the next property, you don't even care about the last property because we're using estimated rent schedules on the next property. But on a VA, we're talking long-term rents. They're not going to go based off estimate. They're not going to go off like AirDNA data.
Can I just show them a schedule? I think you mean Schedule E, but can I just show them a Schedule E?
Well, no, I mean a Schedule C because if you run it as a business.
Okay, but I run it as a Schedule E. Can I just use it as Schedule E income and the lender doesn't have to know how I got that schedule?
Yes. It's on your tax return. Doesn't matter what kind of rent.
Yeah, I mean, if you're maintaining that property, because you want to use what you're doing at your current property, use that income, then qualify for the next property, right? Yeah, if you have 2 years of that, I don't see any reason why they could not allow you to use that. So yeah, because it's, yeah.
That's been my experience.
Right.
But I'm going through that with client right now.
Cool. And once again, like that gets really nuanced. And if someone, here's the other piece about VA loans. 92% of loan officers don't do more than one a year. So think about that for a minute. So 8% of loan officers are doing more than one VA loan a year. And this month we are closing $2 million in volume of VA. So you got to talk to someone who knows what the hell they're talking about because so many people don't. And it's so different than FHA and conventional. And I just hear people getting bad advice all the time. So I get irritated by it because once again, it's people who earn the benefit with combat and warfare and, you know, everything they've done for this country. So people getting misinformation really pisses me off in these situations or just in general. So you do want to make sure that's a big piece, just evaluate your loan officer and make sure they actually know what to do with a VA loan if you have the eligibility. Any other questions?
My big companies, that part of the week.
Yeah.
Conventional loan, they'll take 75% of rental income.
Right.
Qualifying.
Right.
Same VA?
Yes, it's pretty much, I'm trying to think of the calculation exactly. It is very similar. It's going to be reduced because that obviously they can't anticipate that everything's going to work perfectly to market rent. So yeah, typically in all those calculations, we're using a percentage of it. It would not be 100%. All right. Well, I think that we got in the weeds enough there. Probably confused some people who have never dealt with VA loans or don't have eligibility, but I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for sitting here and chatting about VA loans with us tonight. If you have any questions, please take down our email, phone number. We'd love to connect with you. Also,
okay. I was going to say, she has a phenomenal online presence. She used to be a broadcaster, so she's great on video. I'm not. So if you get on her Instagram handle, which is
the Ashley Bromley, please follow me. I have lots of loan things that are very educational.
that are not just VA. So
that are not just VA.
everything.
No,
because we,
everything.
like I said, 45% of our mix is VA, but the other
we do
entire piece is conventional. Yes. I'm a broker. We're a broker, so I broker everything. So anything you can imagine that you want to finance, I could probably, like, I could hit up Lloyd's of Linden if you want to, like, insure. I don't know, but yeah, so we do a little bit of everything. But yeah, we'll be around here for a few minutes. Yeah. So a broker, So I've looked at every, because I got recruited into it 10 years ago and I didn't know anything about mortgages. I learned a lot about the entire industry. And I looked at every model there was, and there's a lot of different models. But where I started was a call center online, and I was just slinging mortgages every day, like 1,000 calls a week. So it was great training. But ultimately, I never met people. I never made relationships. So that is one model, like the Quickens, the Veteran Uniteds, the big guys that are just online. So that's a different space. And then you have retail loan officers. So let's think Fairway, Guilds, Movement, and then you have mortgage brokers. So the difference really between those two and mortgage brokers are I represent specifically the client. So we have 150 investors that I have a program that I shop through on your particular loan scenario, because every one of those investors is going to have a different profit margin that they're trying to make, and they're going to want different loans. So I represent your interest with the lenders. So how it works is they want my business. I represent your business. So they have to do a great job. So I keep sending them your loans, and they give high service, and I don't care where you go, ultimately, because I make the same amount of money. So there's no ethical thing for me like, oh, and lender A is going to pay me this, lender B is going to pay me this. I'm going to take my client to lender A. No, there's none of that. I just want to get the best service and the best deal for all of our clients. So that's kind of the difference between a mortgage broker and then someone who's captive to one company. So let's say on the other, like Fairway, like you are just representing that company, and that's the only rate sheet you have too. Right. Where I have 150 rate sheets. So it's just a different model. And me and Ash are very entrepreneurial, and it fits us best. It's not the right fit for every loan officer, but that's why we have all our own branding, all our own. Like if I unplug from the company I hang my license at, I take everything with me and plug into the next company. Yeah. So it's just different because I want to own everything. So
it also enables us to get creative in certain situations that some people don't necessarily have access to. So we also like that piece of it as well.
When she says creative, like here's one really great example that everyone runs into. If you have a shit appraisal that you get on like a conventional deal, and let's say these are just company names because it's their channel, but let's say Fairway does an appraisal, they cannot get away from that appraisal. Like it's very hard that company, because of their vertical integration, that they're going to be able to get you away from that appraisal. If I get a bad appraisal and I'm like, that appraiser was the worst appraiser I dealt with, that's not a fair value at all, I can take your loan from this investor, we just like decline it out, and then we go to a different investor, order a whole new appraisal, and that's not a conflict of interest for me. So that's the neat part with mortgage, is just able to get more creative, like she said, at the end of the day. So there's some neat tools.
That situation, is your firm covering the cost of that second appraisal?
It depends. I mean, we don't control appraisers. So here, let me explain that real quick. So appraisers are contracted by appraisal management companies who are middlemen between lenders. So you have lender, appraisal management company, appraiser. All the appraisers are third-party contractors. And this all happened because of 2007, because everything got rigged. So there has to be these layers of separation. So when we order an appraisal, I'm ordering it through the appraisal management company. That appraiser is dealing with the lender. I don't have anything to do with any of that. All I am is ordering it. Does that make sense? So no, if we're going to switch, I'm going to tell my client, I'm like, hey, we can figure out how to make this appraisal work, or we can switch. Because at the end of the day, if there's a $10,000 disparity in this appraisal, and my client's like, let's take a risk, let's go to this other lender and order a new appraisal, and that one comes in $10,000 higher, do you think that client cares about $600 for the additional appraisal? There's got $10,000 more in value. Does that make sense? So yeah, so typically no, because it's not my fault it didn't come in. So and my clients are very aware of that. Like I tell them everything up front. I'm a very straight shooter. So and they don't have to do that. They can just be like, let's just back out of this house. That's also an option too. So it's just someone who really wants a particular property, and if the appraisal didn't work out, because we can't control any of that. No. Any other questions? Oh, good.
You said earlier that allowing someone to assume your VA loan is really not in your best interest. Mm-hmm. Aside from not restoring part of your entitlement.
That's all. That's it.
That's it. Okay.
Correct. Yeah, because if you have another veteran do it, they can obviously use their entitlement. But if you have a civilian, they just take yours. So that's why I don't like that. Okay. But that's the only reason why. Cool.
Again,
everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.